Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Isaiah. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and today we are going to be doing more of a dive into a topical discussion, and that topic is overcoming challenges, why quitting may not be your best option. Now, this is a topic that I thought would be really important to address because it showed up with a lot of my clients recently and has been touched on in a couple of our videos that we've done more recently as well when we're talking about young people and there seeming to be some kind of generational gap between them living in anxiety and having a lot of difficulty trying new things or feeling like they're capable of tackling new challenges such as moving out, finding a full-time job, getting married, having kids. You can name whatever complaints that the older generation might have about the younger generation, and you name it, they'll complain that, oh, these young people aren't able to do all those things. And so I don't know what the research or statistics might actually say about that. I think there are a lot of complicating factors in terms of economy, the way education and jobs are set up currently. But anecdotally, I have seen that a lot of my younger clients have a lot of difficulty with dealing with anxiety. And this is not just in the clinical sense, but just as a sense of being willing to fail, being willing to take on challenges where they might not succeed right away. This has gone from some of my youngest clients all the way through to my college students and even some who are beyond college. And where this becomes challenging for me is this turns into they want me to be a surrogate parent for them in the sense of me telling them, hey, you need to do this, you should do this. This is step one, this is step two. And then when they have the assurance that I've told them the right thing to do, then they can go out and sometimes carry that out. But at the same time, they want that authority figure telling them what to do because they don't feel confident making that decision themselves because it might be the wrong decision. Or what if I can't actually do it? There's a lack of resilience and confidence there, and that's what I want to talk about today. So when we're talking about overcoming challenges and how anxiety relates to that, we need to talk about the cycle of avoidance. This is something that I see a lot with anxiety. A lot of my clients have resonated with this idea. The idea of the cycle of avoidance is that there's something that is scary. Maybe it's a test, maybe it is trying a new skill, maybe it's going out with some friends that you're not entirely comfortable with yet, but you want to get to know them better. And what happens is that there's a mental barrier there. Something about that is off-putting or scary, or we're worried about what could go wrong. And our typical response is to avoid that, which is completely natural. We see something scary, we want to move away from it. And this is insidious for two reasons. The first is that we get a tiny sense of relief when we avoid something that's scary. There's that sense of relief like, oh wow, I dodged a bullet. I don't have to worry about that anymore. The second insidious thing is that it builds up that situation in our mind just a little bit. Because we avoided it, it must have been something scary, and therefore we were right to avoid it, and in the future we've trained our minds to be more likely to avoid it because that's what we did last time. We got a sense of relief, so therefore it must have been dangerous, and so the next time this situation rolls around, that seems like that's the best way to handle it, by avoiding it. And so you'll see how with an acute situation like maybe there's a hungry lion in the room, yes, avoiding that makes a lot of sense. But when we come to recurring stressors, such as attending a class where we don't feel like we understand things, finishing an assignment that's late and we've been procrastinating on it and now we feel guilty and ashamed that we haven't turned it in yet and it's getting towards the end of the semester, those kinds of recurring stresses that we keep avoiding and building up in our minds, and we get that little bit of relief every time we avoid it, that cycle of reward and fear is very difficult to overcome and becomes a hamster wheel that becomes really difficult for people to get off of because they've marinated in this cycle for so long. And so when I talk to some of the parents of the younger kids that I treat who are maybe in this cycle of avoidance, who have a lot of fear about taking risks or about putting themselves out there or failing in some kind of capacity, this is not saying that it is the parents' fault exclusively, but more so that the parents have a lot of influence in how their kid sees things and how they've been raised and what kinds of risks that they are willing to expose them to. And one question that I've been asking my parents, or even some of my college-age students, is at what age are you going to be ready for this? At what age are you going to learn this? And usually they don't have an answer for me because in their minds, they recognize the reality that someday they'll have to deal with this, whether it's paying bills or whether it's doing that homework assignment on time or getting married or whatever it is that their long-term goal might be. But they recognize that eventually I'll have to deal with this. But the answer in their minds was always an unspoken later, not right now. And that feeds right into the cycle of avoidance. is that if I can feel better right now by avoiding it, then the long-term goals and dreams that I have can be put off until later. And so if there's some kind of challenge that you're facing that you've been putting off, or if you recognize in yourself these signs of that cycle of avoidance, that might be an important question to ask yourself. Like, when do I expect myself to be ready for this? When do I expect myself to take this on? And to be honest about where you are with that answer right now, whether it is just later and it's like, I don't want to think about it right now, or do we actually have a plan for by the time I graduate college, or by the time I am 26, I would like to be able to do X, Y, and Z. That's a huge shift in thinking, because now you're starting to plan concretely instead of just saying, I'll get to it when I get to it. And here's the other thing that I really hammer home for my clients who are still living at home with their parents, and especially some of my younger clients, is that resilience and a willingness to take risks and learn from failure instead of being devastated by it is not something that happens just because someone hits a certain age, or just because someone reaches some certain milestone like graduating college. This is something that is earned over time. And it was really telling when I asked one of the parents that I work with recently that they were very concerned about their child seemingly not to have any resilience, not being able or willing to push through mild discomfort to be able to do what they need to. And I asked, how did you learn to do that yourself? Like, you don't seem to have much problem with that now. And they recognized they weren't born that way. They had to learn by making mistakes. And that is what a lot of us as parents and as kids that we have a lot of difficulty with right now. We don't want our kids to suffer. We don't want them to be uncomfortable. We don't want them to be unhappy. But being happy all the time is at odds with maturing. This kind of resiliency and willingness to take on challenges where we might fail doesn't happen by accident, doesn't happen spontaneously. It's earned through making mistakes. I was actually working on a different channel prior to therapy today, and it was definitely challenging. There were a lot of things in regards to making a YouTube channel that I had never done before. Talking to nobody in front of a phone and learning how to edit, and then learning how to market a YouTube channel, all of those things were completely new to me. I had never done any school for marketing or public speaking, anything like that. But those are things that I was willing to put myself out there. And this is not to toot my own horn, but I had to get out of my comfort zone and experiment with different things. Some things crashed and burned and got no views, some things got big, and just learning from those experiences helped me to develop that confidence. And at the end of it, this is what we're talking about. It's the confidence in yourself to be able to make mistakes, to be able to fail, and to own up to that and learn from it instead of letting it be devastating for us. Whether it's going out and playing a new sport or starting a new hobby like having a YouTube channel, those are all things that nobody is just naturally going to be perfect at right away. But the only way that we get better is not by reading about it, not by hearing about it or watching lectures from other people. It's by going out and doing it. Now, those things can be helpful and supplemental to that, but nothing replaces the firsthand experience that we can get. So okay, maybe this isn't a formal diagnosis. We're not talking necessarily just about anxiety here, but this revolves around issues of parenting, of our goals in parenting. What are our goals for ourselves as young adults or college students or high schoolers? And if we're setting that goal in terms of resiliency, capability, openness to experience and making mistakes and learning from them, then we're going to have to sacrifice the idea that we're going to be happy and comfortable all the time. Those two just don't always go together. Eventually, that sense of capability, that sense of confidence, that willingness and openness to mistakes and new experiences will lead to greater fulfillment and meaning and happiness in life. But it doesn't happen on the same trajectory. But so let's say, okay, I recognize a cycle of avoidance in myself. I recognize that it's at odds with what I'm trying to accomplish in life. So what do I do about that? Like, maybe I'm a young adult and I already feel like I'm 6 feet under with the cycle of avoidance and everything just feels difficult and challenging and I can't get over that hump. What am I supposed to do with that? Well, first of all, I'm glad you asked. The first thing that's really important is having that awareness that this cycle is going on, so we can start to recognize when I'm telling myself those things, when I am avoiding things. And that helps us to sort through whether it's a hungry lion in the room that we actually should be avoiding, or whether it's just that mental barrier that is holding us back from taking a risk or making a mistake. What I encourage a lot of my clients to do is try some kind of low investment activity, something new to you, something that it's okay if you mess up in. And this is where I encourage a lot of the parents of my younger clients. If you don't let them make mistakes now and learn from them, when they're in elementary school or when they're doing like little league sports, when are they going to have a chance to fail later? If you feel like the stakes are so high right now that they cannot mess up, they cannot make some kind of mistake and explore a little bit, then what are you going to do when they're in high school? When now you can start weighing, oh, well, this isn't going to look good on their college apps. Or then when they're in college, well, this is going to affect their future careers. Eventually, it leads to a cycle of avoidance for the parents as well, where they can't allow their kid to fail at any point because they started with their kid being unable to fail very early on. So like I said, no matter what stage you're at, whether you're a kid or whether you're a parent of a young child and you're in college or you're a young adult now or you're an older adult now, try something low investment, low stakes. For me recently, it was joining a church softball league. I'd never played softball before. My hand-eye coordination when it comes to those kinds of sports is terrible. I got maybe one hit in the like 3 or 4 games that I played, couldn't catch the ball. But here's the thing, I was willing to put myself out there. It was okay for me to look dumb, to look incapable. And I do have a self-image of myself as a capable and fit athlete. And so it was difficult for me to put myself out there and feel like I was embarrassing myself or that there was a sport that I wasn't good at. But the important thing is me going out there, and not that I have to eventually become some kind of pro softball player or great softball player. I'm not even on the team anymore. But the important thing was for me mentally engage with that. Focus on getting better, focus on learning, and focus on being with the people that I care about, having fun with friends at the same time as me stretching myself in terms of my openness to something that was new for me and something that I was very not good at, right? So there's a difference in me trying to be discretionary about that, right? I could do that with softball. I'm not gonna do that with my job. I'm not going to go and be like, oh, this intervention sounds interesting. I've never had any training with it, but hey, I'm open to experiences. I'm open to failures. So I'm going to try this thing that I've never learned about, except just in hearing and passing. So there has to be some kind of discretion about like, what is an actual low stakes, low investment environment where I can fail, where I can learn to make mistakes and learn to be okay with that. I do also want to validate that this cycle of avoidance is so natural for people because it is a normal response. This kind of response was developed because we had legitimate physical fears that we need to avoid. We're not the toughest organisms on the planet, honestly. Sometimes a big dog is enough to take us out. So this is a very natural response that we have to things that we perceive as threats or dangers. And so it's really important for us to recognize that cycle of avoidance so that we can think rationally through whether this is an actual threat that we need to be avoiding, or is it just something that I am prioritizing my own comfort in this present moment and missing out on the opportunity to grow, to learn, to be better. So those are my thoughts on overcoming challenges and why quitting is not going to be helpful for us most of the time. There are going to be some limiting factors where you can't try everything and where we legitimately do need to quit or avoid at some point. So I'm not trying to say that that's always the wrong option, just to be more mindful of when I am choosing to avoid, when I am choosing to quit. What are my reasons for that beyond just my comfort or my difficulty with dealing with embarrassment or making mistakes? Because the bottom line is that we develop that confidence. We develop and earn that resilience through experience, through mistakes, through learning, and it doesn't happen just spontaneously just because we hit a certain age or a certain milestone in our development. So I hope this video was helpful for you all, whether you're a parent or a high schooler or a college student or someone who's just learning to overcome challenges at whatever stage of life that you're in. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please do like and subscribe. Comment below what your experiences have been with overcoming challenges and what's been helpful for you in that journey. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I'll see you all next time.